The air in the Royal Gallery of Challenges was thick with the scent of ozone and arrogance. Before the jeweled dais, representatives from a dozen star-faring species stood in postures of unease or defiance. At the center of the polished floor, a human woman stood, her hands clasped loosely behind her back. She wore a simple shipsuit, a stark contrast to the silks and bioluminescent robes around her. On the dais, perched on a throne of living crystal, was the heir of the Kral Empire. Her scales held the sheen of beaten copper, and her crest, a mark of her royal lineage, fanned out in a display of iridescent violet. Her voice, a melodic chime, carried absolute authority. "The challenge is clear," the princess sang. "A test of spirit and endurance within the simulacrum. To any who withstand its full cycle, our trade embargo against your species will be lifted. Who among you will face the Soul Forge?" One by one, the ambassadors demurred. The simulacrum was infamous. It did not test the body but the mind, hunting for weakness, fear, and doubt, then making them manifest. The Talaxian ambassador had emerged catatonic. The Grux delegate had fled after mere minutes, babbling about spectral horrors. Finally, the princess's multifaceted eyes settled on the human. "And you, child of Earth? Your people are new to the galactic stage. Your history is a short, bloody scream. Do you wish to withdraw? It would be the wisest course." The human met her gaze. "We'll take the challenge." A ripple of clicking laughter moved through the Kral courtiers. The princess's crest fluttered in amusement. Brave words. But the simulacrum devours bravery. It feasts on primal terror. You are a species of soft flesh and fleeting years. You cling to your fears like comforts. She leaned forward, her tone shifting to a mocking lilt. "Let me be merciful. You won't last a minute, human? I would not see your mind shattered so publicly. Withdraw." The human did not blink. "We will take the challenge." The princess's amusement vanished, replaced by regal irritation. "So be it. The consequence of failure is the permanent ratification of the embargo. Your species will be isolated. Remember you chose this." The human merely nodded. The simulacrum was a featureless silver sphere hovering in a chamber adjacent to the gallery. The human was led to a platform where neural filaments, delicate as spider silk, descended to connect with the ports at her temples. The court and ambassadors watched from behind a resonant barrier. "Begin the cycle," the princess commanded, settling back to watch. She expected a brief, tragic spectacle. Inside the sphere, the human found herself standing in a familiar place. The simulation was flawless. It was her childhood home, on a hill overlooking a Martian settlement dome. The sky was a dusty pink. The air was cool and thin. It was perfect, and therefore it was wrong. A whisper slid into her mind, not a voice, but a direct injection of feeling. This is safety. This is peace. Why leave? Why risk the void? It was a seductive pull, a lure towards contentment and stagnation. The human observed the perfect sunset. She then turned and walked through the illusory front door, out into the Martian plain. "Nostalgia is a trap," she said aloud to the system listening. "We honor the past. We don't live in it." The scene shattered. The next environment was a battlefield. The shriek of kinetics, the smell of burning metal and flesh. Figures in the uniforms of an old Earth conflict fell around her. A shell exploded at her feet, and the simulation delivered a shock of simulated pain. The whisper returned, sharper. "This is your truth. Violence, chaos. You are a destroyer. This is all you are." The human dropped to one knee, not from pain, but to pick up a handful of simulated soil. It bled between her fingers with digital precision. "We remember this," she stated, her voice steady. "We remember, so we do not repeat it. You mistake memory for identity. The battlefield dissolved into a starscape. She was adrift in her shipsuit, the infinite black of space around her, her oxygen reading blinking a critical, failing red. The ultimate fear, isolation, the silent, infinite dark. The void pressed in. You are nothing. A speck. Your struggle is meaningless. Just let go. The human closed her eyes in the simulation. She did not fight the panic. She let it wash over her, acknowledged its cold touch. Then she focused on a single, concrete memory, the vibration of a ship's engine through deck plating, the smell of recycled air and coffee, the sound of her crewmates arguing over a card game, the profound, mundane connectedness of a shared voyage. The void receded, unsatisfied. The princess watched the chronometer. 1 minute passed, then 5. The human's vitals, displayed beside the sphere, showed elevated stress, but a coherent brainwave pattern. No screams. No neural collapse. The quartz mocking clicks had ceased. The simulacrum, frustrated, changed tactics. It became psychological, specific. It showed the human her greatest personal failure. A closed airlock door, a face behind the viewport she could not save. The guilt was visceral, tailored, a wound ripped open. The human inside wept. The tears were real. Saline tracked down her cheeks in the real world. The princess leaned forward, a flicker of something like pity in her eyes. This would break her. Every species had a breaking point, but the human did not crumple. Through the tears, she spoke to the memory. I carry you. I carry the lesson. It does not define me. It guides me. The guilt was not dismissed, but compartmentalized, transformed from an anchor into a compass. The scene faded, leaving her standing in a gray non-space. The simulacrum made one final desperate attempt. It presented nothing. An empty, gray plane that stretched forever. No sensory input. No memory to hold on to. The ultimate deprivation, designed to unravel consciousness itself. The human sat down in the nothingness. For a long time, she simply was. Then she began to hum. It was an old tune. Without words, its melody carried through generations. She followed it with tapping her fingers on her knee, creating a rhythm in the void. She gave the nothing a pattern, and in doing so, denied it its power dot in the gallery. 23 minutes had passed. The crawl were utterly silent. The princess stared, her crest lying flat against her skull in a sign of profound confusion. The human's vital signs had spiked and fallen, had shown distress and sorrow, but the line marking cognitive coherence had never wavered. With a soft chime, the cycle ended. The filaments retracted. The sphere went dark. The platform extended, and the human woman stepped off. She was pale, her eyes rimmed with red, and she moved with the deliberate care of one carrying a great weight. But she stood upright. She walked towards the dais. The silence was a physical thing. The human stopped at the foot of the dais and looked up at the princess. The air of the Crawl Empire found her voice, but the melodic chime was gone, replaced by a hushed, almost reverent tone. How? The simulacrum hunts fear. It finds the cracks in every spirit. The human took a slow breath. It does, and you were right. We are a species of fear. We fear the dark. We fear the future. We fear losing what we love. We are made of fears old and new. She paused, gathering her words. But you made a mistake. You thought fear was a weakness to be exploited. For us, it is not a flaw. It is the fundamental ingredient. The princess simply stared, uncomprehending. The simulacrum presented my fears, the human continued. My home lost. War endured. The void vast and lonely. Failure permanent. It showed me the things that keep me awake in the night watch, and it expected me to run from them, to break before them. A faint, weary smile touched her lips. But we humans, we do not run from our fears. We move through them. We hold them close. We learn their shape. We build our lives, our societies, our starships, not in the absence of fear, but because of it. We are not brave in spite of being afraid. Our bravery is the act of carrying that fear and walking forward anyway. Your machine looked for a mind without cracks. It found one that has been cracked 1,000 times and filled each fracture with stubborn resolve. The human took a final step closer, her voice soft but clear in the stunned gallery. You thought you were challenging a fragile being. You were actually challenging the product of millennia of stumbling, falling, grieving, and getting back up. You challenged the inevitable result of a history spent staring into the dark and deciding to light a candle, however small. You did not challenge a woman. You challenged the living sum of every human who ever looked at impossibility and said, nevertheless. The princess rose from her crystal throne. The gesture of royal power seemed small now. She looked from the human to the silent, deadly sphere, and then to the ambassadors of the older, supposedly wiser species. She had seen the unbreakable will of a species that had turned its own fragility into its greatest strength. The embargo, the princess said, her voice formal once more, but underpinned with a new, hard-won respect is lifted. The crawl will treat with humanity, not out of pity, but out of recognition. Her multifaceted eyes held the human's gaze. It seems I had no idea who I was challenging. The human ambassador simply bowed her head, the weight of the simulacrum still in her bones, but her spirit, tested and confirmed, unbroken. The challenge was over. A new understanding, vast and formidable, had begun.